Well, here we are. It is Friday, the 27th of March, and we're sort of coming to the end of Asia Week down in New York, as many of you know. And we're going to go through some of the results, and I'm going to have to go back. There were so many sales, and the market was so interesting in how things did. I noticed that Sotheby's, of course, had a good sale. Freeman's had a sale today that did extremely well. Doyle had a good sale earlier this week. But one of the trends I'm really starting to notice is that the estimates, we've talked about it many times before. The estimates are being pushed down. It was very noticeable at Christie's. They had very, very, very low estimates on everything. So it looks like a lot of the stuff sold for 3, 4, 5, 10 times estimate. It was fairly common throughout the sale because they were able to get their consigners to go along with very, very low starting prices. And Sotheby's had a bit of it too. And I noticed that Heritage had a sale. They had very high estimates, and a lot of their lots didn't get through. So that's sort of the lesson that we've been seeing and talking about now for a couple of years. Low estimates, modest. Don't put out big estimates and big expectations, and let the audience decide what your things are worth. And they tend to do very, very well. And we saw it again today at the Freeman sale. They had some paintings that really took off that were very good, and I'm going to cover them in another video. One by Zhang Dahuan sold for around almost $300,000, and it had a fairly modest estimate. And that's sort of the trend that we're seeing increasingly. High estimates scare away buyers. That's all there is to it. And those that have learned that lesson, I think, did very, very well this week. And across the board, the Japanese things did well. There were a couple of Hokusai great waves that came up. One of them there was one at Bonhams that was a good one, not a great one, but it was a very good one. Sold for about $900,000. There was a very, very fine one that came up at Christie's, sold for over $2 million again. We saw one sell for $2 million a few months ago, $2.5 million from that museum DX session, and another one turns up because high prices tend to flush things out of the woodwork. People eventually get to the point where they see something selling for that kind of money, and they're going to say, well, I like the print, but maybe not quite that much, or your grandfather bought it or something, and they decide, well, now's the time to get rid of it. So that's the way that works. On other things, the identification assistant service on bid amount and the preview assistant will be turned back on in the next 24 hours. It's all queued up. There's some adjustments that need to be made on the back end to get it going again. So if you've been holding off and wanted to send in pictures of things to learn about them, you know what to do. You go to bidamount.com and fill out the form and send it in. Any rate, and what else is going on? Not much. It's very nice here. It was almost 60 here yesterday. It was rather shocking. We're still getting squared away after being away for a while, and but it's nice to be back. It's good to be back, and we've got a whole bunch of things coming up that I'm going to have to get into in the next few weeks. But at any rate, in the next few days, I'm going to try and get some additional videos out here on the different sales that took place and get into a little more detail. But this is the weekly roundup sort of video that we do. So we're going to take a look and see what was going on this week. All right. One of the things, this was at the Doyle sale the other day. You may have seen it in the little sort of post-sale video I did quickly on it earlier this week. It was sort of a highlight reel. There was the big pair of Kangxi vases. They were very, very attractive. And in the end, they ended up selling for a little over $200,000 against a $30,000 to $50,000 estimate. Again, modest estimate and big surprise. They did extremely well. These had, of course, been sold at one point by the Shate Gallery in New York. Not a surprise, but a very rare pair of vases. And then there was the watercolors for the China trade. We had talked about these a few weeks ago. I thought they were very, very nice and reasonably estimated. And at the end, with the premium, they ended up going for about what does that work out to? About $4,500, sort of on the upper mid-range of the estimate. Very attractive. And again, we're seeing sort of renewed interest in these paintings, which is very interesting to me. They were undervalued crazily for so long. Now, wasn't that, 10 years ago, a group of paintings like this would have sold for probably not three or four hundred, maybe $600 or $700, $800. They were bringing, I remember when they were selling for a couple $100 a piece not long ago. I bought a pair of, and they were miniatures. They're a fairly rare type of tea production and paintings from a sale down in the Washington D.C. area. I bought the pair fully matted, ready to hang for $300. Not that long ago, so it does show some renewed interest in this area of art, which is very good to hear. And then this, of course, were the tables over at these were at Bonhams, I believe. Yeah, the Bonhams sale. We had talked about these last week or a week before because these are very nice Zitan Qing Dynasty tables. And there were two pairs of them in the sale. This is the more expensive pair. They sold. They did very well in the end. They ended up selling for $889,000, and the other pair sold for around 490 or 500,000, something like that. Very attractive, carved Imperial Zitan corner. They're called corner leg tables, and these are fairly long. These were fairly big tables. This one was about 7.5 feet long each, and there was a pair of them, Zitan wood, probably early 19th century, beautifully done. Wonderfully done. They might have been 18th century too. They're very, very difficult to date. And I forget, I don't know how they dated them. Did they even date them? Okay, they called them Qianlong to Jiajing. So they're saying 18th or 19th, early 19th century. Very beautiful tables. And then there was the Zitan display cabinet or storage cabinet. This was a very attractive thing. And it was probably done during the first half of the 19th century. They just dated it as 19th century, probably Jiaqing or Daoguan period, but wonderful quality. And it ended up going for $76,700. So the furniture stuff seems to be very strong. And I'm going to get into that furniture sale at Sotheby's. They had the two pieces that we talked about last week, the chair and the table, both did great, and we're going to cover those in another video. The chair, just so in case you're interested, sold for a little over $2 million. It was an extremely good one. We looked at it fairly carefully and thought it was an awful nice example. Sometimes they sell for $1 million, sometimes they sell for a little under $1 million. The really good ones, as we've seen in recent years, sell for over $2 million. And that was a really good one. All right, and then over to this, the Imperial Embroidered Buddhist Altar Frontal. This was a nice one. There's a similar one to it in the, I believe they said they did the research on it. They said it was, I think it's in the Palace Museum collection. But this was a beautiful hanging, quite fine detail, quite fine quality, and very good condition. And that's what sells silks. This one did just fine. It brought $23,040. And it measured, how big was this? It wasn't terribly big, but it was good size, 50 by 29 inches. So it was about a little over 4 feet long, but a very good piece of silk. And then the lantern vase. This was a fine example of Jiaqing Marken period. They gave it a fairly strong estimate. I think it was estimated at 120 to 160,000. Went a little over the high estimate. Came in at $165,600. This was a nice one. This was a very, very attractive piece, and the enameling on it was very good, as you can see. The colors are good. The colors are clean. You don't see any wear or rubbing anywhere on the enamels. The decorations are complete. The gilding is all complete. All of the little things that lead to a big price are here in this vase. You don't see any, there's obviously no damage to it of any kind, and that sort of thing. But when you have a piece pieces like this that have a lot of enameling and a lot of gilding on them, and all of it remained in basically original condition from the time it was made, you can get a very good price. And this brought a great price. I thought it did very well, quite attractive. And it wasn't an enormous vase. It was a little over 10 inches tall. Some of these are a little bit bigger than that. This was a very good example, very clean looking. All right, and then over to this, the dragon jar. I like this a lot. I thought the dragon was wonderful on this. And this was a Jiaqing Marken period Ming jar. There it is. But I thought the dragon was very expressive. I thought the face on the dragon was very, very nice. The cobalt decoration on it was quite good. Did have a little fleck out of the glaze here, but it didn't seem to impact the value much. Ended up going for $76,700. It measured just a little over 9 inches in height, 9.25 inches. But quite attractive, quite attractive. And there's the mark on the bottom. There it is. All right. Good looking porcelain. And then this, of course, did extremely well. The Yangcai flower ball brushpot. We had talked about this. I thought it was so darn pretty. I thought it was just a great example. And apparently other people did too. It ended up going for $279,900. But the coloring on it was good, and it's a rare thing. This is a rare type. Yeah, you don't see these very often. I think if you went to the Palace Museum collection, you might find one of these, or in the Shanghai Museum perhaps. But extremely fine work, extremely fine, top to bottom, very rare, and it drew a lot of attention. It is Qianlong mark and period after all, so that of course drives the price. But the quality was there. The quality has to be there, and the coloring was interesting. And overall, as a brush pot, it's a rather unusual type, and that drove the price way up there, $279,900. And then the Sotheby sale, this was the one that we did a little video on the other day. Overall, the sale did really, really well. There were some funny moments in the sale, though. We'll get to one of them in a minute. But the lead lot in the sale was this. This was the big Xuande blue and white Ming jar. It wasn't that big. It was 13 inches. It wasn't enormous, but it was good size. But extremely rare. And when we talked about it last week, or a couple of weeks ago, I said, I can't think of another one I've seen like it. I'm sure there is. I've seen some in this general style, but this was a very good one. And during the sale, they announced that apparently they had done some looking on it too, and they felt that this particular type with this particular pattern might be a unique jar. In other words, it was the only one they did. And this was done very early, as you know, in the Ming Dynasty. They were doing a lot of experimenting and a lot of design changes and so forth. Trying to create keep improving the work from previous periods, and this is what they came up with. It was quite beautiful, and it was estimated at $1.5 to $1,800,000. And we had speculated, as you recall, back in that video a few weeks ago, we thought it could go over that. Because it's such a rare thing. Well, it did go over it. It went for $4 million. It went for over 2 times its high estimate, which is a very strong result. But when you have something this good coming into the market, it's not a big surprise that it brought this kind of a price, because it's a rarity. It's beautiful. It's a market period imperial piece, and it's possibly unique. But other things with similar porcelains with similar patterns from this jar can be found elsewhere, but not assembled in this exact order, this exact way. I think it was the point of it. It's very attractive. And then over to this, the little guan dish. This was that very, very small dish. It measured just 5.5 inches in diameter, and this went for $1.9 million against a $1.2 to $1.8 million estimate. Again, a very, very rare bird. Some of the finest work done during the Southern Sung can be seen. This is it. This is these elegant, subtle, very much for the wealthy classes, the literati classes, and so forth. But just a wonderful piece of porcelain, and about $1.9 million. What can you say for a 5-inch dish? It's quite a thing. And then over to this, the pair of 100 antiques cups. These were the Yongzheng period. We thought they were very, very nice, beautifully done, very, very fine workmanship. This was the kind of thing you see with Yongzheng pieces. You see extremely fine, very delicate, very subtle, very elegant work. And it was on both of these cups. They were matched beautifully. The work is just about perfectly duplicated from one to the other. They're almost, you can't tell them apart. They're so closely done, and that goes a long way to driving price. And it was estimated at $50,000 to $70,000. It sold for just a little over $70,000. It's $70,400 for these 2 cups, and they measured. They're fairly small, 3 3/8 in diameter, 3 3/8 inches in diameter each, but very, very nice. And then there was this. This was sort of the funniest part of the auction, and I felt badly for the auctioneer. This lot took almost, I think, 15 or 20 minutes or so to sell. It was a very long, drawn-out bidding process. It was estimated at $8,000 to $12,000, and ended up going for $134,000, which is very interesting to see for a Blanc de Chine, because it wasn't that many years ago that the Chinese weren't buying Dehua pieces at all. They didn't like them. They were very hard to sell for a long time, and suddenly there's an interest in them. Some people say it's the color white. They're superstitious about it. It's the color of death or something. I don't know. I don't know what was keeping them back, but now suddenly they're interested. So this piece here that was estimated at 8 to 12,000. Now it was fairly large. It was 17 inches tall, and I think the estimate was artificially low. On this, we had one 25 years ago that was very similar to this one, and it might have even been a little bit bigger. And I think that one sold. We sold that one for about 40 or so thousand to a dealer in China, in Hong Kong. But this one was estimated at 8 to 12,000, which seemed very low. I would have think they would have estimated it maybe at 40 to 60 or 30 to 50 or somewhere in there. It ended up going for $134,400, and there were these enormous long pauses in the bidding process where it was you could have gone and got a cup of coffee to come back, because apparently there was a lot of chatter on the phones. People were trying to decide whether to bid again or not, and eventually it got there. And the auctioneer should get a medal for his patience, and he was so patient. It was very impressive. If you happen to watch it, you know what I'm saying. I felt really badly for the guy. He was just up there trying to get something going on, and it was just dead quiet in the room, and you could hear a little chatter here and there on the phones, and then they'd come back after a few minutes with a bid. And it went that way for, it seemed like, an endless amount of time. I didn't know how long this lot was going to take to sell. We've seen long bidding processes on multi-million dollar things. You see it on paintings all the time, where the painting that sells for 60 or 80 million, and there's some fairly big gaps in the bid process between bids. That's normal. That's normal because you're discussing huge amounts of money with giant increments, $500,000 increments. But when you're into something that's under a couple of $100,000, it was sort of shocking. But at any rate, it was fun to watch. And then there was this very, very pretty Dehua Kangxi period ewer. Now it had its original cover on it. It was estimated, I thought, very modestly, 8 to 12,000. Beautiful looking porcelain, and very lovely creamy white glaze in beautiful condition. The legs on the chimeras all look to be in very, very good shape. You always want to check the legs on these critters because they can get easily broken. It takes hardly anything to break one of these. So it's a sort of a miracle that this one survived in such good shape. It was estimated at 8 to 12,000. Again, ended up going way over that to 70,400, but it didn't take 15 minutes to get there. It got there fairly quickly, but it was a very good porcelain. And then there was the Ming style Yongzheng period vase. Unusual form. He mentioned that during the sale. He said it's a very rare form. I thought it was. And it was estimated at 400,000 to 600,000, and it did extremely well. It went over that. It ended up going for 832,000. And it's because the form was rare. It was extremely fine in the workmanship. The potting was excellent. The porcelain was snowy white, and the heaping and piling effects of the blue and white. The blue was very well done all the way around. Very much Ming in style, Ming in technique, as far as the decoration goes. And the crowd loved it. And of course, it's Imperial, so that will drive the price every time. And then there was the Prince Guo painting that we talked about. I thought it was a great painting. I thought it was wonderfully done. Prince Guo was a central figure in the Yongzheng government. He was the Emperor Yongzheng's younger brother. He was his advisor. He was universally viewed in high regard as being quite intellectual, and he had a lot of power for a guy that wasn't the emperor. A lot of influence, and. They did this wonderful portrait of him with some script up above it. And this was at the age of 21. He was a young man, done in 1718, before his brother became emperor. This was actually done during the Kangxi period, as most of you know. And it was estimated at just 40,000 to 60,000, which seemed very reasonable. And it ended up going for $537,600. So basically for about 9 times its high estimate. But a rare type of painting. And in fairness, they're a little difficult to estimate because paintings of this type that were done for the court don't come up that often. And this was probably done for the imperial collection at some point before it was taken out of the country. And then there was this. Now, this I thought was one of the bargains of the day. That wonderful screen we talked about that was done during the 17th century, probably during the Kangxi period. This was, they were 7-foot panels, basically, very nicely done, 24 inches wide, beautiful colors, beautiful condition. It had a fantastic amount of provenance with it. If, as you recall, it had belonged to Alan Priest, who was the director of the Metropolitan Museum, and he left it to Robert Ellsworth, the famous dealer and connoisseur and collector and dealer in New York for so many years. Anyway, and here it is. It was estimated, I thought, very reasonably at just 200,000 to 300,000, and for some reason, it would just I don't know why it went for just 128,000. That seems awfully low for that painting, and I'd love to know why. Maybe if any of you went to see this, and you can tell me it had giant rips in it or something. It didn't look to me. It looked to be in quite good condition, but maybe it did. Maybe there was something in it about it that was holding it back. So if you went to see it at the preview it or anything, and you noticed anything, leave a comment about it. I'd love to know what the story was with that, because I thought that was way under the money. If one of you bought it, you got a bargain. All right, and then there was this, the limestone standing figure from the Northern Zhou period, way to Northern Zhou, that had been in the Zhongkong collection. It was estimated at 200,000 to 300,000, and ended up going for 256,000. But it was a beautiful carving, just a wonderful carving all the way around, very subtly done. I love the face of the figure. The hands were complete. Everything was there. And it wasn't that big a statue. It was about 20 inches or so tall, 22 inches in height, but a wonderful example, nonetheless. Just a very subtle, elegant thing. So that was sort of just a quick look at what went on. There was a lot more that sold. We're gonna have to go back and get into it somehow. Like I said, the Doyle sale had a lot of other things that did very well. The Freeman sale had things that did great. Sotheby's had a lot more that they sold, and plus the furniture. We want to go through that, and then there was some things at Christie's I want to talk about. So we'll get to them in the next week. As soon as I get some time, I'll put together the images and we'll get it off to you. All right, now some things that are coming up. Couple of things. This sale is tomorrow down in New Orleans Auction Gallery. If you put that on your watch list, these are coming up tomorrow. This is a nice big pair of 18th century Chinese export covered garniture jars. These were fairly tall. These are 18 inches tall. These are the big ones. The estimate is ridiculously low. I'll just warn you. These should bring 6,000 to 8,000 anyway. The estimate is only 1,800 to 2,500. There's 65 people watching it. Now, depending on condition, I'm assuming they're in pretty good shape. But these are unusually large. You see these as small as 10 or 11 inches, 12 inches, but they also made them quite big at times, and these are the big ones. And they stand pretty straight. I wanted to see the side shot on it. If you've seen these before, these big jars of this type often tip a little. They sort of because they're so vertical that in the firing process, the clay might let go, the kaolin might let go a little, it might tilt a little tiny bit in the kiln while it's being cooked. These don't seem to tilt at all. They look quite good all the way across, from what I'm seeing. There's the bottom of them. They look fine. Is that a repair? I don't think so. I think it's a big stain. There was something here. There's a line in that part of the foot, but I don't see a line over here. It looked like there might have been a break or something happened in the lower part of one of the vases. But they're still rare and big. They still should bring 6,000 or 8,000. They're very attractive, and the enamels look to be in quite good shape. And these are very, very finely done. If you look at the diaper pattern on these, if they have an enlargement of that. No, they didn't. The ground decoration around the figural scenes in here in the middle looks very, very finely done. You notice the gilding on the handles of the chimera, stylized sort of chimera handles are still in good shape. The enamels look good. So we'll see how they do. But they're very, very nice. And also these are coming up at the New Orleans Auction Gallery. This pair of Famille jardinières, these are or Cachepots. These are quite nice. They have the Buddhist swastika in the middle, but these are very attractive. And they appear to be 19th century, judging by the enamels and the coloring and how they're potted and so forth, and the way they look down here at the bottom and around the sides. These look to be 19th century ones. I don't know if they even bothered dating them or if they could. They're saying 18th or 19th century. I don't think they're 18th century, but I do think they're 19th century. And let's see here. And they have a Qianlong seal mark with matching stands. Okay, if they have Qianlong marks on them, then they're mid 19th century or maybe even a little later, because they didn't use a lot of Qianlong marks on Famille rose pieces prior to the 1850s. You don't see it that often. You see it a lot. You're not saying they didn't do it, but you see a lot more of them in the second half of the 19th century. But these are still extremely pretty. The estimate on them is very reasonable, $1,200 to $1,800. As you may recall in the past, these Cachepots and planters and so forth that have come up that are very pretty do quite well. They often bring 4,000 to 6,000 for pairs, even from the 19th century. And they measure 10 inches in diameter, so they're pretty good size. Those are nice. Those are nice. And they still have their under trays, which is nearly a miracle. All right. And then over to this. This is just a reminder of this sale that's coming up. This is the book sale at Sunburst Auctions in California. The sale's on March 28th. I know a lot of you looked at it, but buy some of the books in it. Some of the reference books in there are extremely good. This is a very, very good one by Christian Jorg at the Rijksmuseum over in Europe. He's a very nice man. I had the chance to meet him once. As a matter of fact, he came up to Essex, Mass. with Billy Sargent one day to visit. He was in town, and he came in, and I knew he was coming because Bill called and said, I'm bringing Christian Jorg up. And I brought in my copy of the book, and I had him ask me if he'd sign it for me, and he did. He put a nice note in there. I'd had the book for a while. It was a little dog-eared by the time I saw him, but he's very, very nice man. And this is a very, very good book on the Rijksmuseum collection. If you don't have it, you should get it. It's very well illustrated. It's fairly thick. It's a fairly thick book, but certainly worth adding to your library. And there are a lot of other good books in there too. And I'm going to harp on books until the day I die, because I'm absolutely stunned that the price of books is going down. The prices of books are cheaper now than they were 20 years ago in many places. And I think it's because there's such a ridiculous reliance on the internet for your information, says I, who am on the internet, but when you do Google image searches and look up things on the internet and search for them, the amount of misinformation that's on here these days from a variety of sources, and not always intentionally misinformation, just misinformation from people that are selling things, people that are dealers that are selling things that they're not used to selling, and they got some information from somebody that wasn't sure really what they were talking about, but they told the guy something, and suddenly he puts it on the internet with that description, and they've got it misdated, misdescribed, type of vase, type of colors are wrong, all kinds of things. Buy books, buy good books, and build yourself a serious library. All right. And then this is coming up down at, is this New Orleans? No, Olives and Ogletree. They have a sale coming up on April 9th. So you have some time for this one. But this is in there. This is a very nice, certainly appears to be an 18th century fishbowl on stand. Beautifully done, nice looking stand under it. I like this. I might have mentioned this a week or two ago because I like this thing so much, and it's fairly good size. It's 24 inches in diameter, estimated at 3,000 to 5,000, which I think is way under the money. So you might want to look at that. And then the other thing that we're going to do a video on this. I'm trying to set aside some time to do a video for this. This is the Eldred sale. Josh Eldred and the crew down there got a very good Chinese export collection, very fine stuff, and it's well known. Some of it's are well known forms, but particularly well done. And this is a pretty classic case of it's a rose mandarin cider jug. And we've seen these in in different forms. They did lots of them in Nanking and Fitzhugh and so forth. You did them in rose medallion and sometimes rose mandarin. But this is an extremely fine rose mandarin example. Beautifully done strap handles with gilded finishes, ends on them, so forth. Nicely done. It does have a line in the, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I thought it did. It doesn't have a line. I was just noticing. I said, is that a line? I saw one of these with a line in it recently. It wasn't this one, though. But this is a very nice looking cider jug. And it measures 10 1/4 inches tall. It's estimated at 2,000 to 3,000. The opening bid is 1,000. I think it's worth 1,000. I don't know if it's worth 3,000, but I think it's worth 1,500 to 2, maybe. Because it's a rare type, but it's beautifully done, and there's a bunch of other stuff in the sale worth looking at. I think there's about 100 lots. And anyway, we'll go through it. and get that off before the sale. But go over and check it out now. You can check it out on Eldridge's own site, or you can find it on Invaluable or Live Auctioneers. I'm pretty sure they're on Invaluable too. So there's loads of ways to view this stuff. But as always, register at the site of the auction house so that they get a customer name to go with it, and you build a relationship with them. All right, so that sort of covers it for this past week. Overall, I got to say it was a good week. Everything did great. The prices were strong. Seemed to be a lot of interest. Things that were overestimated, or things that had sold, in the last couple of years at other auctions that are being reoffered, maybe didn't do quite so well. But things that had been off the market for 15 or 20 years, or were new to the market, and there were rare forms and high quality, all seemed to do awfully well. So again, and it's interesting to notice that with everything that's going on in the economy right now, the stock market slid off. It'll stay down. It's going to stay down until the oil issue gets resolved, which will probably be in the next month. But there's a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines, I suspect, from all of that, and people are spending, and we saw this back in 2008 and 9 as well. When the market had crashed, the auction market was skyrocketing, and I think it's because there was a lot of people sitting around on liquidity, and maybe that's what's going on right now. Because this past week you wouldn't know that all this other stuff was going on in the world, judging by the prices at these sales. I think I was extremely pleased to see it. So that's where we are. Healthy markets are good for collectors because it brings new things into the market, gives everybody a chance to buy something new and interesting. When the markets are dead and difficult, people hang on to their things because they don't know what to do. It's a period of uncertainty. But when things get going, and when there's money sitting around, if there's money sitting around, things come out and things bring good prices, and that causes more things to come into the market. So that's the circle you want to be in. All right. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon with another video. We'll do some more post-auction results looks, and do a little bit deeper dive. But I think this sort of covers it, gives you a good idea of where things were for the last week. And I think it's all good news. All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. Join us on Patreon, and we'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.